Now, I said earlier, I'll talk a little bit about broadcast seeding, and you can use broadcast seeding to interseed plants, but your risk of failure tends to be quite a bit higher with these broadcasting approaches. There's a number of different ways, again, to broadcast the seed. You can get little broadcasters that go on the back of ATVs, ones that fit on the back of a small tractor, even on the hitch of your pickup. You can use ones that you walk across the field and just broadcast, wear on the front of your chest. All different ways to broadcast the seed out there. But if you're going to do that, here's some tips that I've kind of put together that will help you, I guess, achieve a little higher success rate. As just with the drilling, interseeding by drilling, you need to suppress that existing vegetation. Again, you can do that. Use any of those methods I already discussed, that heavy grazing, close mowing, your Roundup herbicide, any of those will work. Again, the presence of bare ground is going to be very important. You want to go out there and you want to rough that soil surface up with some type of a harrow, some type of an English harrow, a spike tooth harrow, spring tooth, again, a light disking, any of those things to ways to rough that soil surface up, expose a little more of that bare ground. Go out there and broadcast, spread your seed, and then you're going to want to come back over the top of that and lightly harrow or drag the pasture to cover that seed. Again, try to get that soil, the seed mixing, that seed to soil contact. Again, very important. You can also graze for a short period of time, typically less than 7 days. Again, and let those the hooves on the animals kind of imprint that seed into that soil that you've roughed up. Again, it can be a very effective way to do that. Get that soil to seed contact. And very important to keep that surface wet for 6 to 8 weeks with light, frequent irrigations following the spreading and harrowing of that seed. This is just an example of an English harrow, and these tend to work very well for these interseeding approaches. Many of these English harrows on one side have teeth that point downward. That's good for roughing up the soil just prior to seeding. Go out there and broadcast the seed. Then you can flip those over and use the smooth side, just kind of the chain side of it. Again, once you drag that back over, that roughed up soil where you've spread the seed is going to get that. You do a very good job of mixing the seed and the soil together. Very effective, handy tools to have. Now, there are some plant species that tend to work a little more easily as far as getting them established by broadcasting. Most of the seeds or any of the species that have small, hard-coated seeds. And some examples of that would be timothy and switchgrass as a couple of grasses. Um, Timothy is one of these is one that works very well with this approach. All of your Most of your clovers, your red clover, your Alsike clover, alfalfa, and birdsfoot trefoil. In fact, in the high elevation mountain hay meadows, most of the guys drag their pastures in the spring to spread out any manure that accumulated over the winter time period from feeding their animals out on those hay fields over the winter. And what we got the guys to doing was putting together a mix of timothy, red and alsike clover, and putting a broadcast spreader on the front of their tractor. And as they were dragging their these hay meadows in the spring to spread out that manure and break that manure up, they would spread these three different species in front of that harrow. A lot of the guys use an English type harrow to harrow these meadows in the spring. So again, they kind of got that mixing of or work that these seeds down into the soil, and the seed those three species are very cheap. And again, they all three very established very easily with this broadcasting approach. So just to get ready to conclude here in a few minutes, but some points to remember that there's more to interseeding than just putting the seed in the ground. I get so many guys that, what kind of drill do I use? What plants do I seed or interseed? They do a good job of, rounding up a drill and getting the right seeds, and they go out and they put the seed in the ground, then they just kind of walk away and leave their management um, in place that they've done in just like they've done in prior years. But the management during that establishment year must be altered to favor those new seedlings. They're down there competing with those existing plants, and if you don't alter your management, your risk of failure is almost going to be 100%. So we did some things to look at, altering your management. This was a study we did up in the Steamboat Springs area, basically looking at overstory removal date on legume establishment. And we established a number of different legumes, some clovers, trefoil, some alfalfas. This is just kind of an average over those. And what we did here is, so the 0 weeks after seeding means is this would simulate an early spring grazing, heavy grazing. We basically just went in and we used a mower to mow the existing vegetation as close to the ground as we could. And then we just went in and seeded immediately after we did that. So this would have been back in the May time period. Everything was seeded back in May. And then the other treatments were is 3 weeks later, we came in and removed any existing vegetation down to about 4 inches. Came in 5 weeks later, removed any existing vegetation. Came in 7 weeks later, which would have been corresponded about the normal haying time for this particular meadow in early to mid July. And these are the average densities of those different plant species. With that early simulation of the early spring grazing and then seeding, we got 2 plants per square foot. About the same when we came in 3 weeks later and removed that any top growth. This one that really surprised me was this 5 week time period. Coming in 5 weeks later, we got 3 plants per square foot established. If you have to kind of understand what happens in these high elevation hay meadows. When you get into that late June time period, you get those long days, you're going to get the warmer temperatures. That's when those hay meadows tend to grow very vigorously and very fast. So by removing the top growth at that point in time, it opened that canopy back up, reduced that competitive effects from those existing plants, and allowed a higher number of those new legumes to become established. Compared to waiting just 2 weeks later, when you would normally have cut that hay meadow, we only got 1 plant per square foot established. So again, these are averaged over the different species that we. So here, if we take and look at some of those individual species in relationship to those different removal dates of that overstory, one that really stands out is the Norsen birdsfoot trefoil. Again, it really responded to that 5 week time period removal. Again, compare that over 5 plants per square foot established compared to less than 1 plant per square foot establishing by waiting 2 weeks later to that normal haying time. A couple of the alfalfa varieties responded to that similarly. The Renovator and Spreader alfalfa, again, a good, fairly significant difference between that 5 week and 7 week time period for removal. Okay, one final study to look at. This was a study that we did up in the Steamboat, Hayden, Colorado area, again in one of those mountain hay meadow type areas. And basically, this is where we just went in and took an early hay crop, about a mid-July time period. And this is the time period when a lot of guys actually start haying in those high elevation mountain hay meadows, but the haying period generally goes clear through the end of August into early September. So by no other suppression of the existing vegetation. All we did, again, was go in and take an early hay crop, follow that up immediately by seeding with one of those Truax grass legume type drills. Seeded a number of different alfalfa varieties as well as the trefoil. And the situation of the trefoil, got almost 5.5 plants per square foot established for the different alfalfa varieties, between 2 and 3 plants per square foot established. Now, in these interseeding situations, and, if you think about it, say 2 mature alfalfa plants per square foot, I consider that to be a successful interseeding. You know, those 2 mature plants, once they mature in a year or two, that's going to add significantly to your both yield and quality of forage that you're producing out there. So These are just some things to kind of think about when you're maybe contemplating doing some interseeding. If you kind of follow some of these tips and some of these things that I've discussed today, and again, think about your management during the year of interseeding, you're going to significantly improve your chances of success. And with that, happy seeding.